Good evening, folks, and a hearty welcome to our drive-in theater.
My grandmother recently passed away actually from complications of Alzheimer's. I don't really have anything to say about that except before Christmas when she was diagnosed, I gave her a shirt that said, I may have Alzheimer's, but at least I don't have Alzheimer's.
Funny is a lot of things.
I was filling out our tax information. I asked my dad what our assets were, and he said, well, we have each other.
I feel like that starts pretty early. It has to almost for everyone. I can't imagine that at some point at like 20 someone realizes, hey, I can make someone laugh.
And then got divorced, and now I'm doing the whole dating thing. Yeah. I mean, I call it dating, everyone else calls it stalking, you know.
I love family vacations. We got back recently from Panama in Central America. Got to see some wildlife. Saw this gorgeous three-toed endangered sloth high up on a tree. He was munching on some leaves. Had a smile on his face.
I was always able to make my mom laugh.
I watched it slowly make its way down the tree. It took a while, but it was worth the wait because it was absolutely delicious. Right on the grill. Side of monkey nuggets. Fantastic.
I was 11 years old the first time being told that I have a sense of humor. One of my aunts told me that. With a back tax here and a back tax there. Here a tax, there a tax, everywhere a back tax. Old MacDonald bought the farm. IRS, one more time.
I don't know when that exact moment was, but I know that I was always the one that got report cards sent home with Adam likes attention a little too much, is essentially what they said, and which just meant that I was always trying to get a laugh.
I mean, if you're in your car and you can't fit your seatbelt around you, you're not going anywhere if you get in an accident anyways.
High school is when I noticed I could make people laugh.
I look like Clark Kent went through like a really rough divorce.
Maybe 8 or 9, and that just came from joking around with like my friends and family, especially my family.
We were never poor growing up, but I could tell we were broken in other families. Like, there was always a roof overhead, but the roof was like always leaking.
And then I would say that I realized I could turn it into doing stand-up around probably 18.
I'm an anxious person, is the point. And I ripped my pants twice within the span of like 6 months. And so now I have PTSD, which is just like post-traumatic stress disorder.
Well, I've been writing humor online for years. My website, evitable.com, is a personal blog and a humor site. And I started writing comedy, just funny stuff, and it's something that I thought might translate to the stage. And then I got divorced about 6 years ago, was looking for something to do, and decided to try comedy.
When I was married, every Valentine's Day, I would send my wife 2 dozen roses to her work. Aw, see, look at that. Aw, everybody can join on that. That's sweet. But I'm a comedian. So when I sent her the flowers to her work, and the card that I gave her, I wouldn't put my name on the card or hers. She knew where they were from. But instead, I would just use the card to have a little fun and do a little play on words, a little pun on how Valentine's Day has the same initials as venereal disease. So like the very first year, she got 2 dozen roses at her work with a card that just said, I hope your VD brings you more love and happiness and less swelling and itching. Another year it said, this VD will share everything. In fact, we'll call him his and herpes.
At the moment, it was more of a spur-of-the-moment decision. It was something I had always wanted to try, I think, for years, but never knew what to do.
I got some really big news earlier in the week. Found out that I'm going to be a dad again. So, appreciate it. Yeah, the drunk guy's happy for me. All right.
My wife and I went to see Jim Gaffigan at a theater, and as I was watching him, not to put him down, but I was watching him and I thought, I can do this, because he was just basically reciting a script on stage. He wasn't interacting with people or that. It was basically like a one-man play. And I thought, if that's what comedy is, I can do that.
I'll be honest, I am really excited about it. I love being a dad. My wife, on the other hand, she got pissed when I gave her the news this morning.
pausing so all the slow people can catch up. There's always somebody in the back that's like, how would he know before her? That doesn't make oh, he's a bad man. That's not right. Well, just so you folks know, that was a joke, all right? I'm not telling her.
Well, I was always interested in doing comedy, but I never thought it'd be something that I actually be comfortable getting up on stage and doing.
My throat was on fire, so I went to CVS the next day to get sore throat lozenges. I noticed this inordinate amount of sore throat drops that come from Switzerland. It's true. Which begs the question, why do the Swiss have so many goddamn sore throats? Is it from screaming, Ricola, on top of the mountaintops? Are they sharing that little white plastic toothpick that comes in the Swiss Army knives? Any Swiss here? No? Good. Well, fuck the Swiss and their cheese. Yeah, I know I'm getting charged for the holes. Yeah.
I was going through a pretty rough time in my life. I've been doing comedy now a couple of years, but before that, both of my parents had passed away over the course of 3 years. Lost my mom, and I lost, a couple of years later, lost my dad, and that was some real changes for me. And I've been in a stressful career for most of my life. I went to a law school. I own a law firm with my wife. I've been practicing law for 15, 20 years. And doing that, I originally thought, it'd be good to try something different.
It's true what they say about women being stronger than men when it comes to getting sick. My wife had the same flu bug and sinus pressure as me. She pushed through it getting shit done. I wound up in a hospital, pushed to radiology in a wheelchair to get a CT scan of my brain. I
had really wanted to do something new, and I went to this comedy class at the Orlando Improv and immediately fell in love with it.
The doctor was like, after, sir, it says here it's negative for a brain aneurysm, but you're positive for being a pussy. Thanks, Doc, Obamacare.
I was interested in doing stand-up comedy because I've always been like a big comedy nerd and watched a lot of like stand-up specials and sketch TV shows and all of that. And I started looking at the behind-the-scenes things with these people, and I noticed that a lot of them had they thought the same way I did. They had a lot of the same issues I did, and I felt like it would be like a good fit, and I've been loving it since.
What got me into it was actually I just stumbled on an open mic one time when I was still living in Charlotte. And I just saw these guys, and anyone could walk up and just do it. And it just looked really fun. It looked like something I could do.
I've never heard of it. It's for meeting singles from Eastern Europe. And I actually found this woman. Her name was Tatia. And she was, really clicked. I think she's going to be the love of my life. And I was able to get her to, I promised her, Tatia, it's time for you to come to America, And it was great. She got here in 3 days for free because I had Amazon Prime.
As a child growing up, I actually discovered it bits and pieces. And I found that through life experiences I've always enjoyed it.
The first time was a little bit like an out-of-body experience.
All I was just a little nervous, but I had been to that open mic and watched people 3 or 4 times before I decided to go up, and I was like, everyone else can do this, why can't I?
Probably the most terrifying. I was so incredibly nervous, and I don't remember any of the jokes, and I just ran out of the room, ran to my car, and just drove away. I was sweating as if I ran like a 5K.
There was no stage fright, anything like that. I was thinking more about what are these people going to like as far as my material.
The very first time you do stand-up, I would say the push is just because you're passionate about it. You have to really care about doing it to subject yourself to that.
Well, the first time I performed it, it was kind of apprehension because the group was bigger than I thought, and then the crowd was rowdier than I thought it would be. I thought it was, initially when I auditioned, I thought it would be a small group out at sea, but when it came time for me to perform, the group was bigger than I had anticipated.
Well, in my business, you want to be unique, you want to do something different, so I saw it as far as the comedy business side of it. If I am a cleaner guy right off the bat, that makes me different.
My wife and I do have a pretty good marriage. I got to tell you this about our marriage. We've been married 20 years now. And the thing about it is, don't clap. Wow, that's freakish. been like Guinness or something, I think. It's weird. No, we've been married 20 years. The very first year of our marriage, my wife actually had this cool idea right when we got married, that she would keep this big jar in our kitchen, and every time that we, got intimate, we put $1 single in the jar. And I kid you not, by the end of that year, we saved up enough money in that jar to cover the traveling costs on a great vacation. All right, that was 20 years ago, money went further, but still, that's not too shabby. So this was our 20th year. My wife said, let's try the jar thing again. That'd be kind of neat. All right, let's do it. And so she put the jar in the kitchen, and every time we were intimate, put that dollar in there. I don't mean to brag, but after the end of the year, we saved up enough for an 8-piece dinner at KFC. It was sweet. With 2 sides, right? Yeah. We didn't have to share the Pepsi, but that was romantic. So.
And then the other part was just because I've always had a life with abuse with my dad and taking care of my brother and now my mother who's had a stroke and raising 4 kids and stress and all the problems of daily life, I didn't want to go up on stage and say things to people that are stressful and make them nervous and upset them.
Mine's mostly personal stories. I talk about my life because a lot of my stand-up derives from the blog that I had, which is a lot of personal stories. I've taken those and tried to adapt them into stand-up routines, which is a very different style. So it's based on personal stories. It's some of them they're exaggerations. There's some lies in there, but mostly truth actually.
Sure. Yeah. Most of my comedy is mostly clean stuff, and my comedy comes from a lot of observational stuff, but a little twist on it too.
I would say my type of comedy I would say it leans more towards clean. I do curse and stuff, but I wouldn't say any of my material is particularly like raunchy. I joke around about, things going on in my life. I joke around about things with my family,
We argue a lot. We're best friends, but we argue all the time. One of the things we argue about is Batman. Now, who here would say that Batman is a superhero? Okay, you guys are on his side. Cool. Well, Ryan's like in the middle. He's like, I'll support you for the bit, but so we argue about that all the time because I'm like, obviously he's a superhero. He does fucking crazy things that no one can. And his response is, Batman's the type of guy to suck your dick and not make you come. And I was like, this is a really specific way to rate people. I can't use this in anything. Who am I going to use this in an argument with? I'm not going to get in a fight with my dad and be like, Dad, you're the kind of guy to suck dick and not make anyone come, There's no way I can use that.
I guess I don't do that many dick jokes. I don't know, and some guys can pull it off, they can, but there are certain jokes that I just feel like I can't do, like talking about, like saying like dick every 5 seconds or like pussy. Like other guys can say it, but when I say it, like I just feel weird, and then people will be like, that guy's such a creep.
No, we'll talk about that later.
Sometimes even a little insecurity, this may sound strange, it can actually give you fuel as a comedian.
Maybe either insecure is probably part of it, and so you try to offset. That's why sometimes people, I think, are bullies because they're insecure, and sometimes humor is a way. Like people who are really sarcastic can bully other people just because they're pushing off on them. I think sometimes you're going to see it's because that's your only way to defend yourself is with humor. Even though I'm a big guy, I wasn't big when I was little. When I was a kid, I was tiny. I was this little slight little kid, and so humor was my way to save myself from bullies and stuff.
I don't know what. It was like the shaved head, or like it's a white panel van that I drive. That's a joke. I don't drive a white panel van. I promise, I don't. Sure. It's an ice cream truck. So that's what I do is I take things and then I go creepier. Ice cream truck.
Here's my feeling is humor, when you're laughing or you can make other people laugh, you can't feel hurt at the same time. Like if you can actually laugh and get a laugh response from somebody else for at least that moment, there's no hurt, that you've leveled the playing field.
You could use comedy to either, like mask some sort of pain you're going through, or you're using it sort of like as a therapy, like all this like angst or depression or whatever you might have inside you. You are able to use that to actually fuel yourself as a comedian.
I know there's comics I've met that are, very people-oriented. After the show, they live for visiting with the folks. And I'm one of the guys, after a show, I like to hide in the corner. My least favorite part of a show is afterwards when you have to do the meet and greet and that. I've never been good on the one-on-one basis with people. Up on stage, I'm fine. But afterwards, it's hard. And I know a lot of the comics are the same way, to where they just don't like the interaction, but it's like being on stage is our release.
I am a weird type. When I do the Myers-Briggs type indicator test, I tend to, depending on my mood, I'll be in either an E or an I. I am good with social situations. I know how to talk to people when I'm out, but I also sometimes need to recharge for a day or two, and I don't want to go out in public at all. So it's weird. It's a very weird thing, because you are on stage, but you're the focus of attention, which you think as an introvert would be terrifying, but it powers you to have that, to be the sole focus of everyone's attention.
I can't lift myself, so there's no way I was moving her off of me. I was pinned and dying. All of the oxygen was leaving my body. I was seeing colors and spots and realizing this is how Adam Levitable is going to die.
Yeah, and there are so many comedians out there. You can't classify all of them, but I think this is the first thing that surprised me about stand-up and comedians. You see these comedians on stage, whoever, they could be open micers, they could be professionals, and they're absolutely hilarious. And you think that's how they are 100% of the time.
I don't think that it's necessary to be an introvert to be a comedian, no. A lot of my other stand-up friends are much more extroverted kind of people. I definitely think you can utilize it, but I don't think it's necessary.
I think a darker personality helps, because it gives you a skewed perspective on things, and that skewed perspective allows you to come up with some unique way of looking at the world that not everybody else has.
They also have signs inside the rides, and some of them that are really active, I guess, that says, guests with prosthetic limbs must remove said limbs before riding the ride. How many times do you think someone has to lose a limb before they make it an official policy? I feel like once it's like, holy shit, someone lost a foot, but I feel like after a while, how many times does that happen? How many people have fake limbs?
I don't think that going to a dark place with your humor necessarily makes you funnier than another comic, but I do think that comedians who utilize it do stand out a bit, because those are the things we don't really want to joke about.
They have a bin in which you deposit your limb, you go on the ride, and then you come back and retrieve it. I can only imagine that some people just decide to pick up a better limb on the way back. They're like, my hand has a broken knuckle, I'm going to take this one.
I know it's a cliche to think we're all broken and sad, and not all comics are sad, not all comics are depressed. Comedy does come from pain in a lot of ways.
Fuck, I left my arm back on Dr. Doom again, we gotta go get it. At the end of the night, there's just a big box of forgotten umbrellas and body parts for people to take home. The employees, just one creepy guy has a wall of feet in his house or something.
So yeah, I think it can definitely give you an edge in some ways, but as a necessity, I don't think so.
I think that you don't necessarily need to disconnect from the world to be able to make fun of it, but I think you need to be able to look at it I would say, look at it outside of yourself.
You know the way that rappers talk about Tupac and Biggie? I think we should talk about other dead celebrities like that, what if we talked about JFK like that? JFK was the best to ever do this shit, motherfucker!
So you don't necessarily need to disconnect from people or anything, or from the world, but you do need to be able to look at the world outside of you. So that's kind of acknowledging your own perspectives, but then also letting go of them and looking at the world as if it was just written out on paper.
I hate news headlines more than anything. They really piss me off, because it's you don't need to dress up the tragedy, the mass shootings have been insane, and there's no way to make a joke out of that. A few years ago, there was the mass shooting at the Dark Knight Rises premiere, right? and I saw a headline that said, moviegoers drop their popcorn and head for the exits. And I was like, you don't need to put the scene. We already put together that that's a thing that they did. I don't think anyone saw a guy with a gun and was like, well, I did pay $15 for this, so, you know.
It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be that dark, but you have to have something that where you look at something and you say, oh, this is how I see it, and nobody else sees it that way, or maybe a select group, and then you are able to put that into words.
Like, just because you're happy all the time doesn't mean you're funny. And just because you're not happy all the time doesn't mean that you're not funny.
Yes, it can be tricky, and it's still something that at 5 years in, I don't have the ability to really do well enough yet. I think you probably need 10, 15 years before you can even do that to an excellent degree, because you run the risk of the audience sympathizing with you, and you don't want them to sympathize. You want them to know that you're okay with it, and you're telling a story, and you want them to come along for the ride without getting lost and feeling bad for you. So I do that.
When I first started comedy, a lot of the other comics were trying to tell me I needed to take some of the darker stuff from my past and express it on stage. I was uncomfortable with that because I didn't think it would be a good mix. I did try it a couple times, and it was horrible for me.
I tried dieting, tried that liquid diet. You ever tried that Slim Fast, any of you? Ugh. It's effective, though. After only 2 weeks, I completely lost my will to live. That's good diet.
I actually have a friend who killed herself, and a very close friend, and I'm trying to work that into my material to talk about, some of the darker but comedic aspects of it.
I am a twisted person.
It was back in September. I had just gotten back from being on tour, and the next day found out about it. She lives in Michigan, and then it was a Wednesday night I found out. On Thursday night, I was supposed to perform at Back Booth in downtown Orlando, do some time, and I was like, oh, I'll be fine. I can do this. I'm an adult. I'm a mature, 38-year-old man. I can do this. And I got on stage, and I spent 10 minutes just railing about being so angry at her and talking about suicide and how it's terrible and mental illness and everything. And I know there were some parts that actually ended up being a little funny by accident, but the audience was like, they were first interested, and then they just started like shrinking back because they like, I was just going on this rant. I almost cried on stage, which was the first time I've ever reached that point. And then afterwards, like I got more hugs after a show than I've ever gotten.
I was at a house party, and everybody just assumed I was security. Kept giving me their IDs. So everybody just kind of assumes that I'm some mean asshole, I guess. And I'm not. I'm a nice guy. But eventually, if enough people assume that you're an asshole, you're going to try to be the best asshole you can be, is how I take it. Like, I'm competitive. I'm like, I'm not just going to be an asshole. I'm going to be the asshole. I'm going to treat this like an Olympic trials of being an asshole.
One of the things I've dealt with my whole life is taking care of my older brother, who's severely mentally retarded. Severely to the point he can't talk, needs total around-the-clock care, he wears diapers. He's now 52 years old, but he has the mind of like a 15-month-old. I had a good bit that I did about him, not making fun of him or his situation. It was more about society, how they view the mentally retarded and that. And it was, in my opinion, a funny, very well-written bit that I had come up with. The problem is, as soon as you say the word retarded, or anything about that, it puts the audience on edge. And you can tell, it's like, I want to laugh, but should I? Is this real? Does he really have a retarded brother? It's like a different plane. I also dealt with stuff about when I was abused by my father and that. And that just, I don't care how good of a spin you put on it, it's still a dark subject that if there's laughter, it's more like, that nervous kind of stuff.
I do talk about my depression, not as much as I would like to. I'm working into getting into more personal stuff.
Even now, standing up, I'm not bending over or anything. I'm like, my pants could rip at any moment, and then I'll be real embarrassed and I'll have to leave. So it's just a thing that I go through, and I'm glad that you all sympathize with me. I really appreciate that,
But I do definitely address it, but that is something I'd like to incorporate more.
I think humor helps me to get out of it, although sometimes just writing about it in any way, not even just humor, just getting it out there, putting it, anytime you have a feeling inside, if you can get it black and white, you can get it out in the world, it becomes tangible, it becomes something that you can look at and say, oh, this is manageable, this is something I can overcome, whether you do it with humor or not. I use humor sometimes I don't, and I think it's got to be different for every person, just whatever their coping mechanisms are.
So I'm in a Navy Rights and Responsibility class, and topic comes up again about fraternization, dating, and all that blah, blah, blah. So I said, all right, I have a question for you. What's a date? I didn't get the same answer twice.
I know as a kid, I had a lot of experiences to where, you go through things, and I don't want to say it was always like laugh out loud humor. A lot of it was like smart ass humor, but it helps get you through. It's like, do I dwell on what's bad happening in my life right now? Or do I make a joke of it and move on? And after so many bad things, you're like, you know what? I'm just going to joke about it and move on. I'm tired of, dwelling on all this crap because it's not going to go away. So the only change I can make is my attitude towards it.
It's a date if you leave the ship or the command and go ashore. I said, well, gee, they're saying that we weren't allowed to date each other, but they never really came up with a clear-cut definition of what a date is.
So I went to a Tony Robbins seminar recently, the 6'7" guy, self-help, unleash the power within. I'm here to tell you, Tony Robbins, he is the real deal. 2 years ago, Tony Robbins changed my life. Now I want to change it back.
So when my parents passed away, when my dad passed away, I went through a period of definitely some darkness, some changes in my life. I stepped back from practicing law full time.
2 years ago, I was a practicing lawyer. Now I'm telling jokes to drunk people in the Yoo-Hoo room.
And I just felt I had no direction. I was the first time in my life I said, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I tried things like bowling lessons. I tried like little things here and there, try to occupy my time, to try to follow my heart. But I spent like a month in bed, just try to figure out, just completely depressed.
It's the most boring ride there. It's 45 minutes long. And they actually sap the energy from the tourists. That's how they power the ride vehicles.
My ability to use humor and comedy helped me look at the world from a different filter. Because instead of what you get in life is what you focus on. We're all our own director or our own cinematographer. And if you look at the world through a lens of humor, it changes everything.
Yeah, we're even stationed together. We lived in the same apartment complex, and I invited her out to supper, po folks. We both thought of the same thing. If anybody asks, it's a singles outing.
Comedy's not a cure for all, but I found that, even in my day-to-day routine, that, little humor goes a long way.
Years go on, and I'm up in Connecticut, and I invited a gal out for lunch at church. She said, hey, you want to hang out after church? I said, okay, fine. She didn't ask me if I wanted to go on a date. She said, just want to hang out. We go to a Ponderosa restaurant, and I'm just trying to be nice. Hey, I get whatever order you want. I'll pick up the tab. She yells out real loud, I'm on a date! I'm thinking, for crying out loud, am I your first one?
I have definitely used comedy to get past some of the darker times in my life. It's not only a way of escaping, it is also a way of rationalizing things and putting them in a way that you hadn't thought about, making things that aren't funny, which sometimes is really hard to do.
I always been a little awkward socially with people growing up, so comedy has always been a way I can kind of work on that. I've never been that great at sports or anything like that.
Yeah, I work through anything that's depressing with humor. And divorce was something that it was my decision, but it was something that was still hard no matter what. You don't want to hurt anybody if you can, always avoid it, and I was hurting somebody. So that's always difficult. But yeah, humor was helpful. My ex-wife didn't appreciate it because I would write posts on my site about things that I had experienced or whatever that were kind of making light of my perspective, but she kind of took it as somehow making light of the marriage, which I wasn't. She didn't appreciate that. But anything that's stressful, I use comedy. Relatives die, etc. I've got alienated from family through that, through my sense of humor.
So I was at a wedding when I was trying to lose weight, and someone came up to me and said, "Good for you for only having one piece of cake tonight." That sounds like a nice thing, but it's not a nice thing. What she really was saying was, "Good for you for not double-fisting cake in your mouth, you fat fucking bastard." That's really what she was saying. I was like, this is it. This is my Olympic trials. I'm going to go for being the best asshole I can be. So I looked her in the eye and I said, "Good for you for actually finding someone to dance with you tonight. And if you catch up the cake, make sure you put it up nice and high where your 14 cats can't get to it."
and I should have stopped then. But I wasn't going for the bronze and asshole, and I wasn't going for the silver medal and asshole. I was going for the gold. So I said, make sure you put it somewhere safe. We can watch it wither and dry, just like your tired, pathetic vagina. If I had the ability just to jump up on here like it was a gold medal box, I would. That was a gold medal asshole move right there, and it won, and it worked. She learned her lesson. Yes, my grandmother will not talk to me anymore. But she learned her lesson.
Growing up, it was not, the struggle wasn't necessarily in, you know, like, oh, we're poor. Because that wasn't, you know, I never had to starve, I never was homeless or anything. That actually became a bigger issue coming into college when I'm on my own and, you know, there's some sense of independence, and that is definitely when I started to use humor to kind of ease myself out of feeling bad about that.
I'll be honest with you, I think part of my problem is having kids. I do have kids. My wife and I each have 4 kids together. Yeah. I know, it's freaky. I'll sign autographs after the show.
I think as I got older, like my dad left when I was 17, and it was only after he left, fled the country, was barred from coming back into this country, it was only within the first few weeks that my mom and I realized that all our life we lived with this constant stress, and it was the norm. We didn't realize it until after he was gone and out of our lives for good. That feeling went away. And it was just bizarre. Like we both were like, it was like this dark cloud had been lifted that we didn't know was there. And there were still things, you know, my mom and I then were on our own to take care of my brother and the family business and that. So there was still a lot of hard things to do. So yeah, I just developed a sense of humor about everything. Going out in public with my brother, he's very handicapped. People would give us dirty looks and that. I just made a joke about it. I could have gotten nasty with the people and be like, what's your problem? Why are you doing that? He's handicapped, you know, make a scene of it. I just try to laugh it off, roll with the punches. I know guys I grew up with that had pretty much a hunky-dory childhood, and then their parents get a divorce. All of a sudden, they're into drugs and alcohol because their life is overturned in that. I never did that. I've never turned to drugs or alcohol in that. I guess I could have. I think compared to a lot of people, I've had a lot of good excuses to do stuff. But for me personally, I can't say I definitely would have been in a dark place. I just know the humor helps me deal with problems in life, even as a father now with the kids and that. I try to keep things lighthearted as I can. There's times you have to be serious and deal with issues in life, but if I can, I want to try to deal with things with a smile on my face.
Now, the first pregnancy for our oldest daughter, my wife craved sweet cakes and pastries, so I was always buying cakes at the store. Therefore, our oldest daughter is named Sarah Lee. All right? Second pregnancy, my wife craved cheeseburgers, fast food cheeseburgers. So we have our daughter, Wendy. All right? Third pregnancy, I'll be honest, that one was a bit rough on my wife. She had a hard time. The last few weeks she was in the bed, couldn't get out. It was a tough time going. Fortunately, she still had cravings. So we have our son, Jose Cuervo. He slept so good as a baby, let me tell you. Now at that point, my wife and I were done. We were like, you know, that was a tough pregnancy. We have enough kids, no more. But sometimes life finds a way. So sure enough, she got pregnant again, had cravings, and that's why we have our daughter, Oxycontin. That was a toss. It was like Oxycontin, Vicodin, which, you know, that's her middle name, Vicodin.
When I'm depressed, I don't want to do anything a lot of times. I want to, you know, just like stay in bed. And so even sometimes I'll get to places and I'm like, oh, I don't even know why I'm going up. But then I'll go up and I'll do my normal material. It won't be anything about my depression. It'll just be material that I already know is going to get a good laugh. And I'll get off stage and I will feel better. It just, because it's something that I've done, like it's almost like a little achievement, or it's like just a little baby step of, okay, look, I can do this. I can be able to handle whatever is making me depressed.
When I first started dating, I set up profiles on all the dating sites too, everything you can imagine. You've heard of half of them: eHarmony, OkCupid, Match.com. I went further: Afro Hub, JDate, Christian Mingle, I Farmers Only, shit. You know, I put everything where I could. in the newspaper. People still read those. I got responses. They were all like, from women in their 80s. Unless I got laid.
It's Christmas time and I'm feeling generous, so I get out of the car and says, hey, I'll treat you to dessert. He says, oh, it's not a date. Okay, I understand. We sat there and talked for 2.5 hours after she told me that, though. Sometimes it's not really that I wasn't depressed or really down at the time. It's just sometimes, it was just a matter of feeling okay, but feeling better after the performance or even during it, and engaging with people. Well, the years go on, and, this time I'm, meeting some friends. We're going to go meet at a restaurant. It's a foursome, 2 guys, 2 gals, nice combination. Spent a good part of the afternoon getting ready for it. And I'm thinking, gee, I don't know what I'm doing tonight. Am I just hanging out with my friends? Is it a foursome or is it a double date? It's a satisfaction that, like anybody who practices their craft, whatever it is. I meet my friends at the restaurant. We get out of, we're all sitting together at the table, and I'm thinking, I don't know what to do. If I offer to pay right away, I don't want her to tell me it's not a date. But I don't want her to think I'm a cheapskate either. What am I gonna do? Waitress gives us the menus, and for about 10 minutes, the silence was deafening. And then, the silence broke. She points to the menu. All right, Ed. Here's what I want. I want this appetizer and this dinner.
Comedy is definitely therapeutic, but I'm not the kind of person who will be depressed and go on stage. I'm the kind of person who will be depressed, watch comedy, and then go on stage after I've gotten over, however long period of time that is. If I have a really bad week, I probably won't go on stage, but I'll still be absorbing comedy, just make myself feel better and be a part of this thing that I care about, and then usually go on stage after.
Getting into comedy, I had really good training for heckling and everything, because my mom is just the best heckler.
Who lit your fire, girlfriend?
But I like petite girls, and there's a couple reasons. Number one, if the whole dating thing doesn't work out, I can just deep fry her for a snack and eat her later. That's a joke.
Wait.
I would never eat anything later.
What's spinner?
That's the one thing I've had trouble having patience for. Just a heckler, whether they're drunk or they just want to impress their friends. That's the one pet peeve of mine, I guess. There have been times when I've seen a heckler and I kind of want to just be fuck you, dude. I got 5 minutes. Out of this whole week, I get 5 minutes. Go fuck yourself, man. Get out of here. But with a heckler, you can't get emotional with it. You can't let it fuck up your set because then they win. I just recently discovered, because that happened to me several times. If a heckler does something and you just flip out and say, "Oh, fuck you, man," and you just go on a rant and cursing the guy out, and then you walk off, the heckler won, he won.
I'm on Tinder, and I don't think, I know, right? Thank you. Anyone here, on Tinder, by the way? Oh, be honest. There's one person who's honest, and the rest, it's liars, all of you. I've seen half of you on there, but I haven't gotten any swipes to the right. Recently, I haven't gotten any swipes to the right. And I think it's because when the ladies see my picture, they think it's just an ad for ITT Tech.
I don't really care about hecklers, to be honest. I mean, I'm having a great time when I'm up there, and what I've told a lot of my friends who are, either new stand-ups or even ones who've been doing it longer, I'm always just a bad night's a bad night. You still went up there, and every time you go up, you're making yourself a better comedian. So that's all I really care about. I don't really acknowledge them. Sometimes it's hard not to, but I'm up there for myself, so I don't really care about hecklers.
What sucks, don't get me wrong, I love being in America. I love being an American. I know that sounds fucking cheesy, but guys, we're not in North Korea right now. That's a beautiful fucking thing. That's crazy. The fact that I'm able to come up here and talk shit about my own country is insane. In saying that, it has its flaws, you know? You're judged for who you are. Growing up, I was judged a lot because I'm like a black dude, but I don't necessarily talk and act like a stereotypical black dude. And I listen to a lot of loud, angry, aggressive music, and then also a lot of sad music. And people are like, whoa, I don't get it, you're black. And I'm like, who has a better reason to be sad or aggressive than a black person in America? What I'm saying is, if you see me at a concert like fucking From Bottoms, don't think to yourself like, what's a black guy doing here? Think to yourself like, he probably needs this more than he does. He could walk out and get shot.
Hecklers. Here's the thing, when I first started, I thought a heckler was somebody that intentionally was trying to insult you, or, you suck, or, you stink, boo, that kind of thing. Apparently, comics view any type of interaction from somebody in the audience as a heckle.
You guys know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah, he does. I can tell.
Somebody says something, you make a joke referencing something they're familiar with, and they'll be like, oh, I've been there, that. And I've seen comics absolutely flip out on that. To me, I don't mind that. I actually enjoy that interaction with the audience.
There's going to be one hell of an after party. That's all I'm saying. That's it.
I don't view that as heckling. To me, a heckle is if somebody is intentionally trying to disrupt the flow of the show. I honestly have not had to experience that, which a lot of guys don't get that, but I think it's because of my type of comedy, because it's not confrontational, because I'm not there trying to offend or make anybody mad, and because right from the start I'm already interacting with the audience. I think they realize, well, that's not going to throw them. I could care less what you say. I've been to some wild shows where the audience, the comics before me just lost the audience, and the audience was, just ready to attack. But like I said, that's when I just go and kind of attack back in a nice way, like, hey, it's not going to bother me. We can have fun with this. You throw something at me, I'm going to bat it back. I don't care.
I don't get them very often, and I don't think I'm very good at dealing with them. I tend to just ignore them and talk over them because, generally speaking, the only person who can really hear the heckler is the people at his table and me. A lot of people, comics will assume that everyone can hear what they're saying. They can't sometimes. So if you just power through them, they're just going to be quiet on their own. I'm a little over 6 feet tall. I weigh about 275 pounds. I look like a security guy at a strip club, and so like I'm afraid that if I'm too mean, I'm going to turn the audience against me, because my presence is a little imposing. So I'm afraid that if I use that against a heckler, that it might backfire. So I tend to actually step back. Whereas I have some comedian friends that they will just rail into the heckler and they'll just tear them apart. But they're so likable on stage, and they're so maybe just kind of, I don't want to even say effeminate, but they're less threatening, and so you can get away with it.
As far as bombing, I never was much for open mics. Like I said, I started by actually performing on a comedy stage and kind of went from there. I started going to a few open mics, mainly to try to interact with the other comedians and that, because I kind of do my own thing. I don't belong to any comedy group, any comedy circle. I just do my own thing. So I know a few guys, but don't belong to any. There's no camaraderie for me with these other guys. So I started going to a few open mics a couple years ago just to see if I could be friends with any of them. And I will often bomb at open mics if I try to use my normal material. And that's when I learned open mics and actual paying audiences at club shows are two different things.
I don't know, unless I'm not feeling well or something, I don't ever feel that I've bombed so badly that I'm like devastated. It's always been, well, okay, this stuff didn't work, is how I look at it. Not I bombed, it's like, all right, the stuff I'm working on, I need to rework it. It's like if you just try you're building something, you build a robot and the robot doesn't work, you're not going to be devastated and be like, okay, I got to tweak this and tweak this. That's how I look at it.
Have I ever bombed? It's like, when have I like not bombed is like a better question. Oh man, have I bombed? Yeah, I bombed so many times.
The other day I was talking to a friend of mine. He was like, dude.
I bombed so many times, and I still bomb. Like sometimes I'll still go and I'll still bomb, but It was hard at first. Bombing is really hard at first. Like in the beginning, you have to have like you gotta have like rough skin. And the hardest part about bombing, and which is why it tempts you to quit, is because when you bomb and no one laughs, you take it personally. Like you take it, oh, they don't think I'm funny as a person, which is not true. Like someone could be totally funny, interesting off stage, but when you go up on stage, it's an act. You're a performer, you're an entertainer and stuff. So if your timing's a little off, just that could mess up your entire set. It doesn't mean you're not a funny person. You just messed up somewhere along the way. Sometimes it can mean you're not a funny person, I don't know, but it depends. But yeah, the first few times I bombed, it just sucked, and there's no way to get around it. Like, everybody bombs, and I guess I've sort of, at this point, become immune to it.
So he asked the first fat kid, what's your wish? The fat kid says, you know what, I want to be fit, I don't want to be fat anymore, I want to be good looking. And God says, bam, there you go, back to earth. He was fit, good looking, great. Next fat kid comes up, God's like, hey, what do you want? And the fat kid's like, you know what, I don't want to have diabetes, I don't want to be fat anymore, I want to be able to run like 100 meters in like 8 seconds, I want to be like so fit. God's like, boom, you got it, done, and sends it back to earth. And all the fat kids start doing this, alright? Until there's one fat kid left. And God sees him, and this little fat kid is on a cloud in heaven. He's rolling around, laughing hysterically, just rolling around. And then God is kind of like looking confused, like, what's so funny? All right, my child, you have one wish. What can I do for you? And then after laughing for about 5 minutes, the fat kid just gets up and he says, make them all fat again.
Making anyone laugh feels amazing. Just looking out and seeing that, like, you affected them in some way is very cool.
Recently, someone very close to me passed away. It gets funny. Recently, someone very close to me passed away, right? And so every night now, I'm kind of laying in bed and I'm like, fuck, like, any time in my time, I'm like, oh, when's it gonna get me? When's it gonna get me? But then I realized something. There's something very comforting about leaving a world like this. It gets funny.
Yeah, no, like, I can never, it's sometimes hard to tell if someone's having a bad day, or I can tell if they're at least, someone shows up not with the intention of laughing, but they're like, they'll have a frown on their face and they'll just be like, oh, like, make me laugh, like, funny guy, you know.
There's so much violence, there's just so much going on, and I was like, you could probably equate it best to, like, getting to leave Disney World. Like, you go and you have kind of a good time, but then afterwards your feet are tired, you're sweaty and you're tired, and you're just kind of like, was this worth how much I paid for it?
I think those people could be having a bad day. I think so, like, you know, because, like, who would go to a comedy club with, like, that attitude, like, make me laugh? It's like, you had a bad day, like, obviously, you know? And making those people laugh. It's like, I'm glad I can make the people who came to see the comedy, I'm really glad to make them laugh. But if I can make those people laugh, then that feels, like, really good.
Oh, it's the greatest feeling in the world. I mean, it really is. There's no... Comics are really appreciative when they hear that from someone in the audience. If they come up afterwards and they say, you had a great set. I mean, a lot of people don't even realize how important it is to comics to hear some of that. Or, you made my day. You made me laugh. I was having a bad day. And to hear that is tremendous. It really is.
I've never done drugs, but I can only guess that it's the closest thing I've experienced to a high, because it feels good. I'm not the type of person in my everyday life that, is laugh out loud, ha ha ha. I'm more of a dark kind of, dry humor guy. But when I'm on stage, that's when I open up. And when I see it affecting someone in the audience to where they're just having a great time laughing and having a great time, it feeds me to where I just feel good that I was able to be a part of that.
One thing, I do have to give credit to my wife. I think the reason our marriage is still so good, she works hard at keeping romance alive. She likes to try new positions in bed. She did one the other night, tried a new one. She fell asleep on my side. That's very sweet. I'll take it. That's top. She was on my pillows and everything. Oh, loved it.
You know, the next day they may have a crappy day, have to go to their crappy job, get a divorce, who knows what's going on in their life. But for that, you know, half hour, 45 minutes that I've been up there on stage and performing in that and seeing them happy, and that's why I do it. That's I wish there was better money, don't get me wrong, but the main reason I do it is that high that I get from being a part of that laughter.
Not too long ago, my wife was in the shower, all the kids were out of the house, and I'm I'm going to get in that shower and enjoy her. So I got in there, and she assumed I was just there for a shower. Yeah, right. She grabbed that loofah and started washing my back, but I thought, I'm going to make moves on her. So I turned her around, grabbed that loofah, started washing her back. To tell she was really enjoying herself. You know, so I thought, all right, time to turn up the heat. Took that loofah and I threw it down. I grabbed her firmly by the hips, and I turned her to the side. It was that moment I knew I won her over, because she looked back and she goes, ooh, what are you planning to do back there, mister? Yeah, and I said, well, nothing, I had to pee in your foot was on the drain. After 20 years, that still counts as romance, all right? I did not have to move her foot. Yeah, that's called chivalry.
It's not even if they're having a bad day or anything like that. Like, doesn't even really come into play. Just making people laugh in general, whether they're having a good day and you get to make them laugh. That to me it's amazing. I like the ability to make people feel whatever. It's not just about laughter. Because my writing, it takes a serious turn as well. It's not just humor. And if I can make people feel or think or discuss or anything like that, I'm going to be happy with what I've done.
So she always wanted to see what I could come up with. She just always wanted to see how I could escalate it. One year I had the best one ever. 2 dozen roses tour work, no name on the card. The card just said, "Happy VD, you're gonna really love these." Happy VD, you're gonna really love these. Could not wait for her to get them. I'm sitting at home waiting for her to call. She calls. I said, Amy, what did you think of the flowers? She said, Adam, I love the flowers, but I don't understand the card. I said, what don't you understand? It's fucking hilarious. Happy VD, you're gonna really love these. She said, Adam, that's not what the card said. The card actually said, my dearest Amber, oh, how much I love you. I cannot wait to see you again. Love, Eric. So I called the flower place and asked what happened. They said, sir, it sounds like we just switched orders. We'll send you out 2 dozen roses for free. I said, don't bother, we love the flowers, save your money.
I mean, my whole existence, I'm just a kind of an egotistical, narcissist attention whore. So like, if what I get to do makes somebody's, day a little different, or makes them think or feel or cry or smile, then it's made my day.
But let's think about that poor bastard Eric. He's going home to his girlfriend Amber on Valentine's Day thinking he's going to get laid and he's going to find his shit in the front yard on fire. Because Amber got 2 dozen roses with a card that just said, Happy VD, you're gonna really love these. I said, please don't send Eric any more flowers. Send something helpful, like a U-Haul. That is a true story. I'm hoping someday Eric will be in the audience and I can meet that poor bastard. Buy him a drink, meet the new girlfriend, Amber's gone. And then just because I'm a sick son of a bitch, and I think it'd be funny, follow Eric home that night, get his home address, and then for the rest of his natural life, every Valentine's Day, send him flowers. He would ruin every relationship. He'd just be like, girl, if I get flowers at the house, don't look at him. And she said, why? Why can't I look at him? He's gonna really love it. Basically what's gonna happen, he's gonna really love it.
So when I started doing comedy, I did research and found out that, joy for heart is good medicine, and humor does have healing effects.
When the game's over, Ed, will you buy me an icy? And I'm thinking, geez, I've been trying to break the ice all night. So why not? The icy costs $3, by the way. Now, the last time I had an icy, they were called coolies, and you could buy one for 10 cents. If that's what if that tells you how old I am.
Comics are a lot of ways. Comics do have the ability to really cut through some of the BS in the world.
I
hope no lesbians were offended by that joke. I love lesbians. I find it comforting when women find all men unattractive instead of just me.
Comedy has to be genuine. Yes, you tell real life stories, and sure, you embellish it a little bit, but it has to be genuine.
There's no one way to be a good comedian. As long as you're entertaining audiences and making them laugh, that's what's being a good comedian.
I'm one of the few guys that is proud to say that, to my knowledge, I've never walked anybody at one of my shows, and I'd like to keep it that way.
Now, here's a warning. Do not name the kids after what the dad craves while the mom is pregnant. That would work, because if we had done that, our kids would have been named stuff like Angelina Jolie, Scarlett Johansson. Third kid probably would have been like Flo from Progressive. I don't know. Hey, Fat Man God, she's kind of hot, isn't she? Yeah. Yeah, she's like that, your best friend's mom kind of hot thing going on. I like Flo, yeah. I like to show her my price matching tool.
I had to wrap this up, but something happened on that ride. I stuck my foot out because I was a dipshit kid, and it was coming to the end. I got my foot stuck in Disney's track. And the ride, it was moving forward. My foot was not, my mom's right next to me saying, Mom, look what's happening. And like a mother could do, only mother could do, lightning quick reflexes, pushes me out of the ride vehicle. I was within, my foot popped out of his sneaker. I was within moments of having my foot snap off.
And just because I am a twisted person, if I ever meet her, I'm going to send her 2 dozen roses on Valentine's Day someday. And the card's just going to say AIDS.
My mother's no longer here now. If I had a chance to speak to her one last time, I'd just like to tell her, fuck you, Mom, I could have been rich.
So there's this thing called an Irish goodbye.
Funny is a lot of things.
And I said, fellas, let's face it. I says, the kids nowadays have got it made. They have love-ins and love-outs and freak-ins and freak-outs, and they smell flowers, and they write poetry, and they wear love beads. Instead of us sitting around here, let's all go to Griffith Park and mingle with some of these kids. Maybe some of that youth will rub off on us. And maybe what we got might rub off on them. But it doesn't drop off before we get there.